Hi, I'm Elowen. The night before I was supposed to fly to Geneva for my dream job, my parents shredded my passport, right in front of me. No screaming, no warning, just silence and a smile. They said, "Roaches don't deserve wings." Turns out, they'd been planning it for years, rerouting my emails, forging my signature, even filing false mental health records. They called me a defect. But what kind of family builds a home just to erase someone from it? And if they were willing to shred my passport, what else had they already taken? It was a Sunday evening that felt like it had been borrowed from a painting. Still air, amber light leaking through the lace curtains, and the sound of cicadas buzzing like a song only the South could remember. Charleston held its breath in that moment, but inside the house I grew up in, the quiet had a weight. Not the kind that comforted, the kind that warned. I had just returned from a short drive to the pharmacy, half an excuse really, to breathe in solitude before another week of walking on eggshells. My flight to Geneva was in exactly 14 days, 2 weeks, and I'd be stepping into a new life, a new job, a new country, a new me. But none of that seemed to register in this house. As I opened the front door and walked past the foyer, I noticed the lights were off in the hallway that led to my room. I flipped the switch. The bulb flickered once, then steadied, revealing something that didn't feel right. Boxes, piled waist-high, taped shut. Some were labeled, some weren't. My bedding was gone. The bookshelf, the soft gray chair where I'd spent countless nights drafting designs, it had vanished. In its place was a folded aluminum ladder and a vacuum cleaner that hadn't been used since I was in high school. I stood in the doorway, blinking. Maybe they were rearranging. Maybe someone was using the room temporarily. No, I wasn't going to fill in their blanks for them this time. I stepped into the hallway and turned toward the kitchen. My mother was rinsing a wine glass at the sink like she didn't hear me walk in. "Mom," I said, steady, "what happened to my room?" She didn't turn around. "Oh, we needed the space," she replied. "We figured, well, you won't be needing that room anymore, will you?" No apology, no preamble, just a declaration, like she was doing me a favor. "So you cleared it without telling me." "You're leaving, Elowen." "You're the one who said it's time to move on, didn't you?" "I didn't say erase me." She finally turned, drying her hands. "Honey, don't be dramatic. It's just a room." I didn't reply. My breath caught in the space between logic and betrayal. She picked up her glass again, walked past me like I was furniture. I walked back to what was left of my room, technically still mine, just not in meaning. I stood there, letting the silence speak what none of them had the courage to say. The posters were gone, the light bulbs dimmer than I remembered. I opened the closet, emptied, except for an old hoodie, folded neatly as if they wanted to prove they left something behind. I sat on a nearby box. "This house," I whispered, "was never home, just the place I was tolerated." Later that night, I wandered into the dining room to find the new family portrait already framed and hanging where the antique mirror used to be. Aunts and uncles stood smiling, Mom and Dad beaming at the center. Callista, my sister, draped elegantly on one side. I scanned the edges. I wasn't there. There wasn't even a gap. It wasn't edited. It was chosen. "Callista looks just stunning in this shot," Aunt Meredith had said that afternoon. Such a presence. I remembered standing in that room while the photo was taken. I remembered being asked to take the picture. "You have a steadier hand," Mom had said. They didn't just replace me in that moment. They erased me from the wall. My father joined the room just as I was about to leave. "You look tired," he commented without looking at me. "Everything okay?" "You tell me." He smiled faintly. "You always took things too personally." That night, I went out to the car with my suitcase, already packed, not because I was leaving that night, but because it helped me breathe, knowing I could. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the dashboard. It smelled like lemon wipes and resilience. I looked back toward the house. Every window was lit up, but none felt open. "The room didn't have my name on it," I whispered. "Maybe it never did." The next morning started with cold coffee and colder stares. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the travel checklist I'd saved on my phone, trying not to look up. Lorna was humming in that detached, too sweet way she always did when something underhanded was already in motion. Vernon had left early. Callista hadn't come downstairs yet, but I could hear the faint echo of her laughter behind a closed door, filtered, curated, rehearsed for whatever influencer content she was pushing today. The printer at home had run out of ink, conveniently of course, so I took my laptop and headed to the public library downtown. It was one of the few spaces left where I could still feel anonymous, neutral, unwatched. I sat near the back, away from the regulars reading political blogs or searching used cars on dusty desktops. I connected to the Wi-Fi, opened my email, and that's when it began. The first red flag was Geneva's HR coordinator leaving a voicemail, gently asking if I'd reviewed the updated relocation contract. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen any update. Nothing in my inbox, nothing in spam. I searched the sender's name. Still nothing. I clicked around nervously, reopening folders, checking for typos or misfiles. Then I remembered something Zinnia once told me during one of our late-night calls. When people want to erase you, they don't start with the big things. They start with your mail. So I called her. "You sound off," she said immediately. "I think someone's filtering my emails." "What's your domain?" I gave her the info and screen shared. She walked me through a few quick steps, asking me to check my filters and forwarding settings. And there it was, a forwarding rule I'd never created, routing all messages from my Swiss employer to a different inbox titled Family Sync Elowen. "They used a subfolder," Zinnia muttered, voice tightening. "They intercepted every single update from your company. This wasn't an accident, Elle. This was planted." It hit me then. Not just the violation, but the orchestration. "They didn't just erase me from the walls," I whispered. "They fenced me in, digitally." I went home without saying a word. Dinner was silent, except for the clink of silverware and the occasional reminder from Lorna about Callista's upcoming sponsorship shoot. I waited until Vernon was pouring himself a scotch in the study, then stepped in. "You set up a forwarding rule on my email," I said. He didn't blink. "We were just trying to make sure nothing shady came through. You know how many scams are out there? From a corporate domain in Geneva?" He took a sip. "Big companies can be just as careless as small ones. We didn't want you jumping into something you weren't prepared for." It was the calm in his voice that made it worse, not guilt, just arrogance. "That wasn't your decision to make," I said. "I disagree." He walked past me like the conversation never happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet in the wrong ways, too loud in others. Floorboards creaked under weight that didn't exist. Wind whispered things I didn't want to hear. My skin crawled with something I couldn't name. I pulled out my laptop again, this time logging into the home Wi-Fi admin panel. I'd set it up years ago, back when I was still the one maintaining the network. I scrolled through the list of connected devices. One stood out. Guest room cam. I clicked to expand the data. The device was active, recently accessed. The IP address traced to an old baby monitor model, one we hadn't used since Callista was 4. I walked into my former room, now the storage dump, and climbed onto a chair. In the dusty grate above the closet shelf, I found it. Tiny, hidden, still blinking. Back in my room, I connected it to my laptop. The last recording was dated 3 nights ago, during my Zoom interview with Geneva's tech lead. The audio was crystal clear. My pitch, my responses, the interviewer's voice. All of it. They were watching. They had been watching. "The walls watched me dream," I whispered, feeling the burn rise in my throat. "And they smiled while they planned to shred those dreams to pieces." But I didn't cry. I opened a new encrypted email window, attached the video file, sent it to Zinnia. Subject line: "Start here." Body: "Backups begin now. We're playing chess, not checkers." I wasn't going to shout. I was going to document every step, every twist, every lie. I climbed back onto the chair, unscrewed the baby monitor, and held it in my palm. I stared into its lens one last time. "If they were watching," I said aloud, "I wanted them to see what comes next." 2 days passed since I pulled the camera from the vent, Since then, no one asked about it, and I didn't offer a word. That silence had become our preferred language, transactional and calculated. Mid-morning, I walked into the garage to dig out one of my old sketchbooks. Geneva had requested a portfolio sample for a creative visa supplement. I'd kept the good ones in a clear tub marked Design School. At least, I thought I had. The boxes were rearranged. Some had new labels. Kitchen, donate. Books, Callista's, and one in particular, scrawled in Lorna's distinct, tight handwriting. Donation, Goodwill Pickup Thursday. I crouched and peeled back the flaps of the box. My varsity jacket was stuffed beneath a pile of chipped Christmas mugs. Two of my sketchbooks lay curled from moisture, one with a to-be-shredded sticky note on top. Beneath them, a crumpled certificate from 9th grade. First place, Statewide Design Expo. The paper had yellowed, but the ink still held. As I heard footsteps crunching gravel outside the open garage, Ms. Deborah from 2 houses down waved. "Morning, sugar. I hope it's okay. I snagged one of your scarves from the donation bin," she said, pointing to the paisley fabric wrapped around her neck. "Your mom said you were clearing everything out before moving. Can't let the pretty things go to waste." I smiled politely, but my mouth was hollow. "Sure, Ms. Deborah. I'm glad someone's getting use out of it." I hadn't donated a thing. They did it for me, to erase me, to silence me. I walked back inside and shut the garage door with more force than necessary. That sound, wood slamming into wood, felt louder than anything said at dinner in weeks. In the hallway, I paused at a familiar box near the coat closet. It hadn't been labeled, but I knew the shape. The corners still bore the tape I'd used when I was 13, decorating the sides with doodles of Washington landmarks for a school project. I pulled the box open, and there it was, my papier-mâché model of the Jefferson Memorial. Or what was left of it. The dome was caved in, the base crushed. I remembered the night I stayed up past midnight with my dad, gluing the tiny columns in place while he told me stories about civic duty. "Design is integrity," he said then. "It's how you show people you care, without saying a word." But words, I was learning, were cheaper than glue. That night, I smelled the smoke. I thought maybe someone nearby was having a bonfire, or that Callista's perfume had shifted into something more acidic. But as I stepped out back, the scent grew stronger, bitter, charred. The incinerator was lit. I moved closer. Lorna stood over it, dressed in her gardening sweatshirt and Crocs, calmly turning something inside with the long-handled rake. She didn't look up when I arrived. "What are you burning?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Cleaning out old junk." "Thought you'd appreciate the help." I stepped closer. Inside, between flickers of orange, I caught glimpses, edges of notebook paper curling away from ink. A torn corner of my journal, the one with the lavender cover, the sketch of the Jefferson Memorial I had redrawn in college, a birthday card from Grandma, the handwriting unmistakable, even in ash. "You thought I'd want this?" Lorna's voice softened unnaturally. "We thought you wanted a clean start, Elowen. Why carry dead weight?" I didn't speak, didn't move. The rake slipped from her hands and clattered onto the brick. She turned and walked back inside without another word, letting the screen door slam behind her. I picked up the rake myself, and I stirred the ash gently, like I was unearthing something sacred. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just watched the last of my girlhood disintegrate into smoke and memory. Later, I sat in the den with my laptop open, scanning every drawing, certificate, note, and letter I could salvage. Each file labeled, time-stamped, encrypted. I called Zinnia and let it ring twice before she picked up. "They're not destroying things anymore," I said. "They're destroying proof I ever existed here." She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Start with the oldest, then work forward." "There's a special kind of grief when your past is discarded without asking," I murmured as I uploaded another scan. "It's mourning someone who's still alive, and it's you." I didn't notice the envelope until midnight. It was wedged under a stack of books in a box marked Callista, Keep. Thick cream paper, slanted cursive in fading blue ink, addressed to me, my full name, my grandmother's handwriting. They thought they burned everything, but not this. The envelope trembled slightly in my hands. My grandmother's handwriting, elegant and assertive, spelled my name across the front like a whisper from a time when love didn't come with strings. I peeled it open slowly, afraid I'd find nothing. But inside was a single sheet of ivory paper, folded twice. You were never the defect. You were the spark. That was it. No long-winded apology, no attempt to mend the broken, just a truth I didn't know I needed until I read it. And when I read it again, I sat down in the hallway with my knees to my chest, whispering the sentence like a spell. I let it settle in me, not to patch the wounds, but to name them. By noon, I was back in front of my laptop, more composed than I should have been. I uploaded my updated resume and portfolio to Geneva's secure portal, then followed up with HR to confirm the file had gone through. Their reply was quick, polite, full of gratitude and optimism. It should have felt like relief. But my gut kept tugging. Zinnia had offered to help with my final notarized documents. We'd agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown that evening. I had the manila folder ready, everything arranged in neat clips, a pen tucked beside my passport. Around 3 p.m., I stopped by the post office to drop off a package. One of the workers at the front desk waved me over. "You've got something returned, Elowen. Sent it back this morning, but looks like it was meant for you." I frowned. I hadn't sent anything. The envelope was thick, hand-addressed, postmarked from my old high school. Curious, I opened it right there at the counter. Inside was a congratulatory letter from Principal Gray, addressed to me by name, hand-signed. It praised my academic contributions and personal integrity, inviting me as the guest of honor for the upcoming Alumni Awards banquet. Except the RSVP line was already filled in. Confirmed. Callista R. Calloway. My stomach tightened. She'd intercepted a letter meant for me and claimed it, again. Another version of me, overwritten. Smiling in a dress at some event she didn't earn. Not just the future now. They were rewriting the past, too. I left the post office feeling like the pavement was moving under me. The sun was too bright. Everything sounded distant. When I got back home, I texted Zinnia. "You still good for 6 p.m.? No answer. By 5:30, still nothing. I called. Straight to voicemail. Then a message came through, sharp and simple. "I can't meet tonight. Things are too messy right now. Your mom came by. It's better I stay away." The words hung in my screen like smoke. Zinnia had been my only friend, untouched by the chaos. And now, even that was gone. Lorna wasn't just sabotaging me, she was isolating me, methodically, efficiently. "You can survive without a bed," I murmured aloud in my room, "but without a witness, that's how they win." I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything. Instead, I opened an old blog I hadn't touched since college. The URL still worked. I changed the name, set the domain to private, and I wrote, not poetry, not rants, just facts, time-stamped, documented entries, my voice as unfiltered as it had ever been. They wanted my silence, so I started writing everything down. Late that night, I sat cross-legged on the floor, dim light from the screen washing over my hands. I uploaded the first encrypted entry. My story, their edits. Side by side. As the file processed, a new message pinged in my inbox. From Geneva. Subject. Urgent. Psychological stability confirmation requested. I clicked. "We recently received a message raising concerns about your mental wellness. For due diligence, we'd like to invite you to a confidential screening before we proceed with relocation." I blinked. They weren't just burning my past. They were trying to poison my future. Saturday evening came cloaked in forced civility. Lorna knocked on my door around 4, her voice syrupy like she'd rehearsed it. "Elowen, we have dinner guests tonight, old friends of the family. Would be good for you to be presentable. 7 sharp." I didn't ask who they were. I didn't have to. Anytime the guest list was vague, it usually meant one thing: people they wanted to impress, with stories they'd borrowed from me. I wore a black dress, one I hadn't touched in years, simple, unfussy. It had been the dress I'd worn to my first interview at a local design firm, back when I thought effort alone earned space. Downstairs, the dining room had been rearranged like a showroom. New flowers, name cards, a projector screen set up by the far wall. Callista's voice floated in from the kitchen, high and gleaming. When I entered, the small group had already gathered. 3 couples I vaguely recognized from my father's real estate circles, a pair of cousins I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, and a man who looked like he belonged in a political fundraiser. Everyone clapped as Vernon raised his glass. "To family," he said, "and to the next generation carrying on what we've built." The projector clicked to life behind him. A presentation began rolling, slides showcasing UX wireframes, interface prototypes, color theory applications. My hands clenched under the table. I knew every line, every asset. They were mine, built for my Geneva pitch. "She's everything a daughter should be," Vernon said, placing a hand on Callista's back. "We're proud she stayed and chose to build from within." Guests nodded. Glasses clinked. Callista raised hers with a coy smile. "It's all about loyalty." I stood up, calmly, not out of anger, out of sheer clarity. "That slide deck," I said, "is mine. Those are my designs." The room stiffened. One woman gasped quietly. Callista didn't flinch. She tilted her head, swirling her wine. "You mean we collaborated, right?" she said sweetly. "No," I replied. "I mean, I built it while you were busy booking photo shoots." Vernon gave a tight-lipped smile, the kind he reserved for clients who asked too many questions. "You've always had a good eye, Elle," he said. "But it takes charisma to lead, you know that. And theft to maintain your image, apparently," I answered. Nobody touched their food after that. Not really. Forks moved. Nothing was swallowed. When dessert was served, I excused myself and walked to the side den where I'd left my laptop. I needed something, anything to remind me I wasn't hallucinating the theft. I plugged in the external drive I'd been building for weeks. I scrolled through labeled folders. I found the recording, dated 3 months earlier. The living room camera, still synced from their surveillance system, had caught the conversation. Lorna's voice, crisp and smug. "Let her talk to the Swiss people. She's good at pretending to be more than she is." Callista giggled in response. "We should have named her Echo. She only repeats things others say." I paused the screen. The frame froze on my own face, speaking earnestly on that video call, oblivious that I was being reduced to a punchline in another room. I printed the transcript. No rage, no plan for explosion, just a printed copy, sealed in an envelope. On the front, I wrote, "Truth, unopened." I slid it into the back of my passport pouch. Let them toast, let them laugh. But this time, I'll choose the stage. The next morning, just after breakfast, a courier rang the bell. My mother accepted the envelope without looking at me. She placed it on the hallway console like it was nothing more than junk mail. I picked it up. My full name was typed in bold. The return address was my father's firm. Inside, a legal document, thinly disguised as a travel coordination form. But the fine print was unmistakable. They weren't finished taking things. They wanted my name next. The envelope sat on the hallway console like a ticking clock dressed in corporate formality. White paper, gold seal from my father's firm, and my full name typed in bold on the label. Lorna acted as if she hadn't noticed it, sipping her tea in the living room, humming again that off-key tune she saved for moments when she was trying too hard to appear unconcerned. I picked it up without a word. My fingertips already knew it wasn't what it claimed to be. Inside, a single-page document titled Travel Coordination Form. The formatting mimicked the previous employment packets I'd received from Geneva. Same spacing, same header style, but something was off. There was a faint smell of toner, fresh and too eager. The wording felt like a glove sewn from someone else's hand. I didn't sign it. I grabbed my purse, walked out, and drove straight to the UPS store down the road. They had a notary service. I knew the woman behind the counter. Her name was Donna. Her daughter had gone to high school with me. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the document, and raised an eyebrow almost immediately. Then her eyes widened as she read the lower half. "Elowen," she said, voice low, "this isn't about travel. This is a waiver. You'd be signing away any future claim to family property, trusts, even residual shares in anything your name was attached to." I said nothing at first. Then I laughed, quietly. the kind that lives in disbelief and betrayal. They didn't just want me to leave, I said. They want me erased, retroactively. Donna looked uncomfortable. Want me to make a copy? Please. I took the original and left. The copy I folded carefully and slid into the same manila envelope where I kept the transcript from the dinner speech. This wasn't paranoia anymore, it was paperwork. Back home, I sat at my desk and opened the family scanner I used to restore old photos for Lorna years ago. Now it was digitizing evidence. I gave each file a name, timestamp, date, cross-referenced the signatures. Every move labeled, every line decoded. They expected me to be blind. I wasn't. I remembered something Oprah once said in an old interview. You don't just lose family in death, you lose them in deception. I had heard the quote years ago and thought it was poetic, but it was more than that. It was prophetic. That night, while organizing backups, I stumbled on a file buried in an old folder, 2014. It was a document from a study abroad program I'd done in Berlin. The agreement my parents signed to allow me temporary custody under a university liaison. I opened it and stared. The structure was nearly identical. The font, the language, the legal phrase, hereby relinquish, tucked into a seemingly harmless clause. Vernon hadn't just borrowed formatting, he recycled manipulation. This wasn't his first attempt. It was just the first one I caught. I opened a blank Word doc and began drafting an affidavit. I attached both the recent document and the Berlin waiver. I highlighted the overlaps, noted the intentional linguistic reuse, embedded metadata history. Then I emailed it all to the legal contact Zinnia had connected me with the week prior. This time, I wasn't just observing, I was building a case. At 11:42 p.m., as I shut down my laptop, a new notification flashed across the top of the screen. Shared Dropbox folder. Elowen portfolio. Edited by Callista HQ. I clicked. Files had been renamed, some deleted, some replaced with newer versions, same titles, different design structure. They weren't just stealing from me, they were editing me out in real time. The sun hadn't yet cleared the windows when I opened my laptop and clicked into the Dropbox folder labeled Elowen portfolio. It was the one I'd carefully curated and encrypted, housing all the UX prototypes, user flows, and design maps I had sent to Geneva. Every file had once been organized with clinical precision. Now it looked like a storm had passed through. File names were changed. Several were gone. Others had been re-uploaded under the exact same titles but with different formatting, different metadata, and one crucial difference. Creator tags now read Callista HQ. My stomach tightened. I took a screenshot, checked the IP access logs, and confirmed it. The login trail matched her email, her device. I didn't panic. I saved every altered file to an offline drive, time-stamped the changes, backed them up twice. This wasn't the first time they tried to blur the edges of who I was, but now they were bold enough to rewrite me with my own tools. Just after lunch, a package arrived. The label bore my name, the company's logo printed neatly at the top. It was my official welcome kit from Geneva. I carried it to the kitchen counter, slicing through the tape with a kitchen knife. Inside was a laptop, except not the one they promised. It was old, scuffed on the sides. The Apple logo dulled from years of use. And as soon as I opened the lid, I knew it was the family's communal laptop, the one we used to share before I left for college, still logged into a guest account, dust still in the keys. I stood frozen, fingertips resting on the edge of the keyboard. Footsteps approached. Vernon appeared in the doorway, cup of coffee in hand, like this was a normal Tuesday. "We figured your things were already too cluttered," he said casually, nodding toward the box. "We swapped it with something familiar." I didn't answer. I couldn't. They didn't just intercept gifts, I thought, staring down at the relic. They replaced them with reminders of the version of me they preferred, manageable, shared, small. That night, I kept the lights low and my phone on silent. Geneva had already received my updated portfolio link, and I was waiting to hear whether they'd noticed the tampered files. Instead, a different email arrived. Subject: Mental Wellness Screening. Urgent. The body read, "In light of new information shared by a family source regarding your mental well-being, Our legal team has requested clarification before we proceed with relocation. I stopped breathing for a full second. They'd gone there. I dug through my old email archives and found it. An exchange between Lorna and a family therapist from years ago. A single session she dragged me to after a shouting match over me turning down a PR internship she'd set up through a friend. At the time, I was 16. I didn't even know what emotional regulation disorder meant. I called the clinic. After 2 rounds of verification, the receptionist hesitated, then confirmed someone had requested a summary just last week, claimed to be me, insisted it was urgent for international relocation. My voice barely held. Can you send me a redacted version of what was released? 20 minutes later, the PDF arrived. Highlighted at the top was a quote they'd attributed to me. I feel like I'm not seen unless I disappear. No context, no mention of what had prompted it. No mention that I'd said it while talking about middle school bullying. I stared at that sentence until it blurred. But I didn't cry. I didn't message Geneva. I didn't even call Zinnia. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet. 1 tab for timestamps, 1 for impersonation events, 1 for IP tracebacks. I cross-referenced it all with email headers and began creating a clean timeline of digital sabotage. They think they're winning, I whispered as I logged another item. But I'm not trying to win a moment. I'm playing for the end. Near midnight, I walked to my childhood closet, now empty except for a ceiling hook where an old bookshelf once hung. I pinned 2 sheets of paper to it. One, the forged psychological summary. The other, a scanned page from my real journal, dated and notarized, containing the full context of the quote. I stepped back and looked at both. One framed me, one freed me. As I turned off the light, a soft red glow caught my eye. The hallway camera, still blinking, still watching. If they want to watch me break, I said to the darkness, they'll have to keep watching. Because now, I'm building something they can't erase. The house was too still that night, like it had agreed to participate in the betrayal. Every light was off except the one in the upstairs hallway, casting a faint yellow beam under my bedroom door. My suitcase stood upright in the corner, zipped, tagged, and ready. I'd double-checked everything: passport, visa, backups secured on my encrypted drive. Geneva had confirmed receipt of my final relocation documents. My Canadian passport, tucked beneath the lining of my carry-on, was ready in case anything went wrong. I brushed my teeth slower than usual, listening to the tap run. Then, under the hum of the bathroom fan, I heard it. A mechanical drone, low and deliberate. It was coming from the den, my father's office. The sound shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. I wiped my hands on the towel, walked barefoot down the hall, and turned the corner into the open doorway. The shredder was running. The paper sliding through it wasn't blank. The page being consumed was dark blue, stamped, embossed. My passport. Callista stood beside the machine, a wine glass in one hand, the other gently guiding the final pages into the shredder like she was feeding it something sacred. She didn't flinch when she saw me. Instead, she smiled, lazily, as if this were a casual Tuesday night. "Roaches don't deserve wings," she said, then sipped. Lorna appeared in the doorway behind her, arms crossed. "Your place is scrubbing our floors, not flying off to play global businesswoman." Vernon sat on the couch, not even pretending to look away. He didn't say anything, just watched. I stood there, frozen, heart hammering against the inside of my ribs. "That visa took 7 months to process," I said, keeping my voice even. "You paid for none of it." Callista swirled her wine. "You're just a defect we fed," she said, "not a brand we invest in." No one laughed. No one needed to. They didn't just destroy a travel document. They tried to obliterate the idea that I had a destination beyond their control. I walked upstairs in silence, every step deliberate. In my room, I opened the lockbox under my bed. Inside, the second passport sat untouched, Canadian citizenship through my grandmother's bloodline. Years ago, she'd urged me to apply. "In case they ever try to cage you too tightly," she'd said. I powered up my laptop, opened a new message to Geneva. "Proceed with the Canadian passport entry. American one compromised." No emotion. Just data. Just protocol. At dawn, I checked into a modest hotel near the airport. The desk clerk smiled when she saw my passport, made small talk about Singapore's humidity. "Going far?" she asked. "Exactly where I'm meant to be," I said. I was halfway through a bland omelet in the hotel cafe when the woman at the front desk waved me over, handing me a folded copy of the local paper. Page 4. A full column from the Callaway family's PR firm. A formal statement. We wish to clarify that Elowen Art and Callaway does not represent our family or business. Any attempt to align herself with our values is misleading and false. I read it 3 times. Each line hit like a final cut in a series of surgical betrayals. I didn't post it publicly. Not right away. Instead, I snapped a picture and saved it to my archive with the caption, "They shredded paper. I built proof." At the boarding gate, I sipped a lukewarm coffee, scrolling through my phone as the intercom announced boarding groups. My flight number blinked on the screen. Group 3 was called. My phone buzzed. A notification. A video upload had gone live. The thumbnail loaded slowly, but the still image said everything. Callista in the den, standing beside the shredder, the blue edges of my passport visible mid-feed. Lorna in the background, wine in hand. Vernon watching silently from the couch. No caption, just video. No filter, just reality. I exhaled slowly, standing to board. If the sky was never meant for me, then I'll own the clouds instead. The woman next to me on the plane didn't say a word for the first 5 hours, and that silence, kind, not cold, was exactly what I needed. She smiled once, gently, when I buckled in beside her. That was it. No questions, no small talk, just presence. At 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, I connected to Wi-Fi and checked my phone. Notifications stacked like a digital landslide. The video had gone live. I watched the numbers climb in real time. 48,000 views, 132,000. Reposted, subtitled in 4 languages, dissected on comment threads. The clip had no music, just the soft hum of the shredder and Callista's voice floating through the frame like poison on silk. Roaches don't deserve wings. My hands didn't shake. They felt like steel. I opened my portfolio site to prep for onboarding. But something was wrong. Several of my case studies, designs I'd labored over, sketches refined through sleepless nights, were missing from my page. I found them instead on another site. Slightly altered, logos moved, color schemes tweaked. The metadata said Callista EHQ. I checked Geneva's HR platform and found a flagged note, possible IP conflict under review, cross-checking creator credentials. So they knew. They were watching. I sent them timestamps, original drafts, the Dropbox logs, everything. I attached screen recordings of Callista's stolen uploads and receipts from clients I'd worked with who'd already confirmed authorship. I hit send, then whispered aloud. I wasn't just protecting files. I was protecting the truth they never wanted told. That afternoon, mid-flight, a livestream link popped up. It was a design conference I'd been invited to speak at remotely weeks ago. They'd confirmed my video would play during the digital segment. The host introduced the session, but skipped my name. The voiceover rolled directly into family-friendly footage of Vernon talking about nurturing legacy and values through design. I didn't flinch. I knew what to expect. What they didn't expect was that someone in the crowd, someone smart enough to sense the edit, had recorded the entire back-end screen before the final cut. 10 minutes later, the raw version of my talk surfaced on Twitter, then TikTok. And there I was, full screen, unscripted, uncut. My voice said, "Sometimes the people who raised you aren't your roots. They're just the dirt you grew out of." It exploded. Suddenly, I wasn't just the girl with the shredded passport. I was the one who spoke the sentence everyone had kept inside for years. By the time we began our descent, Geneva had replied, "We've completed our internal review. We're thrilled to welcome you aboard. Your access credentials are live, photo ID attached." I stared at the badge, my face on the screen, real and centered. Not blurred, not stolen. It wasn't a sigh of relief that escaped my lungs. It was something deeper. Ownership. Quiet, earned, and irreversible. The wheels hit the runway with a thud. We coasted to a stop under a silver-gray sky. The humidity wrapped around me like a welcome I didn't need to ask for. I walked through the arrival gate at Changi, passport ready, documents secure. As I crossed the last checkpoint, a man in a navy blazer tapped my shoulder gently. "Miss Calloway?" I turned. He smiled, handed me a folded envelope. "Someone asked me to give this to you. Said you'd know who it's from." The envelope was plain, no return address, just my name written in looping cursive. I didn't open it, not yet. I looked down at the writing, felt the old familiarity tug at something in my chest. I didn't know ghosts could reach across oceans. By the time I reached my company's temporary housing in Singapore, the adrenaline had drained. Jet lag sat heavy behind my eyes, but my mind refused to quiet. I unpacked slowly, one item at a time: passport, portfolio, encrypted hard drive, a small envelope still unopened. The silence here felt clean. Not like home, where silence was a weapon. I made the call, just like I told myself I would. The number on the envelope from the man at the airport, disconnected. Of course it was. So I showered, signed the final onboarding paperwork using my Canadian citizenship credentials, and began preparing for my first week on site. That night, while checking my U.S. banking app to confirm an automatic wire transfer to a former freelance client, I saw it. Account activity restricted. A fraud hold. I blinked, reread it, tapped into the details. An alert had been triggered. A complaint filed, flagged for unusual behavior and mental instability concerns. The bank froze the account to ensure fiduciary protection. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. It had Lorna's fingerprints all over it, strategic, veiled under good intentions. They couldn't control me abroad, so now they tried to control my money. Again. But I was ready. I opened my secondary account, Canadian, clean, untouched, and completed the transaction in under 5 minutes. They froze the account. I froze the trust, I said out loud. Difference is, mine won't thaw. The following morning, as I sipped coffee on the tiny balcony that overlooked the city's morning haze, a message arrived from my U.S. bank. Not only had they frozen my funds, they'd flagged property records associated with my name. I called immediately. After 2 levels of transfers and a 30-minute wait, I finally reached someone who didn't speak in scripts. "Yes, Miss Calloway?" There was an ownership title revision on the Charleston property, initiated 6 months ago by another party. A waiver was filed and notarized electronically, removing your name. "A waiver?" I asked. "Yes. It was digitally processed through Vernon Calloway's registered legal firm. Appeared compliant." I hung up before I said something the recorder on the line would catch. I'd helped fund the renovations, paid invoices out of my own account. That house was never just theirs. They used my silence to sign away everything I helped build. I opened my case folder and sent the call logs, transaction histories, and contractor payments to my attorney, Zinnia's contact. I asked him to file a fraud complaint and a formal property dispute. He replied in under 2 hours. I added a new file to my archive. Title: Charleston Theft, Final. By midweek, the dominoes began to fall. A financial ethics account on TikTok, one with 500,000 followers, stitched my passport video with screenshots of the deed transfer and the fraud alert. The caption read, "The golden child gets the keys. The scapegoat gets the receipt." Comments poured in. "They stole her passport and her property. That's psychological warfare." "She's not the black sheep. She's the blueprint." News articles followed. A think piece in an HR leadership newsletter titled "The Cost of Image-Driven Families" used my case as its lead example. I didn't pitch them. Someone else did. Clients began pulling out of Vernon's firm. A few posted statements of their own. Callista's face disappeared from every brand campaign overnight. I checked her socials. Sponsors dropped. Comments turned. Posts flooded with emojis and words like fraud, thief, sister shredder. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. As the sun set, I sat again on the balcony, this time with tea instead of coffee. My inbox pinged with a new message. Subject: urgent. Defamation damages. Settlement proposal from their attorney. They weren't even pretending anymore. They'd built an empire on silence, and now that it was collapsing, they were sending bills for the wind. I sat in the office lounge as the sun dropped behind the glass skyline, its reflection slicing the floor into long streaks of orange and steel. The settlement proposal sat unopened in my inbox. I hadn't responded, except for one line. You shredded more than paper. You shredded the version of me who would have said yes. I hit send and never looked back. Later that afternoon, a coworker from the design team tapped my shoulder gently. Hey, this is making the rounds, she said, handing me her phone. There it was, a blurry screenshot from Callista's Instagram story. A photo of a bouquet and wine glass, captioned in white cursive. Some people steal your life, then cry victim when you defend it. It didn't tag me, it didn't have to. But the comments did. Wasn't she the one who shredded her sister's passport on camera? Girl, you had the whole internet until you opened your mouth. Within hours, the post was stitched, flipped, and reposted by advocacy pages, therapists, journalists, and survivors of family estrangement. Hashtags started trending. She deserved wings and hashtag digital orphan. For the first time, their silence was louder than their words. And for once, it wasn't mine being weaponized. Their words don't shake me anymore. The silence that follows them does. That evening, I sat on my apartment floor, staring at the last unsent draft I'd written to my mother. It was written during the first month I moved back home, back when I still believed she might try. It was an apology, one I never owed, but still wrote. I deleted it without hesitation. Forgiveness is not a door back in. Sometimes it's a wall that says, enough. The next day was a holiday in Singapore, and I took the chance to disappear into a botanical garden alone. I wandered between orchids and banyan trees, letting the quiet fold around me. There was no email to check, no footage to protect, no signature to catch, just me, walking fully in the open. I thought of how I used to live in folders, one for truth, one for survival, one for backup. Now I lived in one place, mine. My apartment was furnished. I had a balcony, a real desk, a fridge stocked with what I liked, not what someone else bought because it was on sale. I was leading my first cross-cultural project next month, designing an app for caregivers of dementia patients, real people, real impact, and no one could claim it as theirs. That night, I checked the mail at my office's front desk. A forwarded letter from Charleston waited in the pile, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. It was from Dr. Rains, the therapist Lorna once weaponized. Her penmanship was slow, but certain. You never needed a diagnosis. You needed distance. I folded the letter, placed it beside the last entry in my legal archive, and closed the file for good. Later, I stopped by a quiet co-working cafe to prep a presentation. I set up my laptop, sipped a lukewarm chai, and began outlining slides. A quote I'd once scribbled in high school adorned my laptop sticker. Survive the rewrite. Author yourself anyway. A woman across from me looked up, squinting slightly. You wrote that, didn't you? She asked. I turned, and for the first time, I didn't brace for the next wound. I didn't open the letter until the morning of the keynote. The envelope had traveled continents with me, wedged in my passport case, moved from drawer to drawer, unread, unforgotten. It was the last thing my grandmother left me. No one else even knew it existed. I sat on the edge of my bed in the soft light of the hotel room, barefoot, steam curling from the coffee on the side table. My palms were still, steady, as I slid open the flap. One day, they'll call you difficult. Let them. The sky doesn't ask the ground's permission to rise. I folded the letter once, gently, and slid it into the interior pocket of my leather bag, resting beside both passports. One from the family who tried to erase me. The other from the bloodline that quietly believed I'd never stay erased. By noon, I was backstage at the International Conference on Digital Identity and Resilience. A sea of faces waited beyond the curtain, some strangers, others people who had messaged me in whispers, confessions, and solidarity over the last few weeks. I walked out without notes. The spotlight warmed my face as I spoke. I was labeled the defect. I was told my voice made others uncomfortable, that my silence was the only gift I had to give. But the error wasn't mine. The mistake was believing I needed fixing. I didn't need to raise my voice. The words carried. That clip hit 1 million views in 24 hours. That night, my inbox held a message from a major publisher. "We read your story. We'd like to help you tell it." I sent back a working title, "The Girl They Tried to Unwrite." Weeks later, I visited a quiet bookstore in Singapore, hidden between a tea shop and an old tailor's stall. I walked the aisles until I found the section labeled Resilience. There, wedged between memoirs about cancer survival and starting over after divorce, was the newly stocked hardback. I didn't take a picture. I didn't ask the clerk for a signing table. I pulled a sticky note from my purse and wrote in blue pen, "You're not the broken one. You're the escaped one." I stuck it inside the back cover and left. That evening, I returned home, made tea, and opened my laptop. A message was waiting, short, without punctuation. "Can we talk? Callista." No subject line. No hello. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I clicked block sender. Deleted the thread. They taught me silence meant surrender. I taught myself silence can mean sovereignty. I lit a candle, not in mourning, but in reverence, for what I saved, for what I left behind, for the fact that I didn't ask permission to survive. Then I zipped my passport case shut. 2 countries inside. 2 histories. 1 woman. They shredded my paper wings. I built jet engines.